to the Italian Wine Podcast. I'm Rebecca Lawrence and this is Voices. In this set of interviews, I will be focusing on issues of inclusion, diversity and allyship through intimate conversations with wine industry professionals from all over the globe. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps us cover equipment, production and publication costs, and remember to subscribe and rate our show wherever you tune in.
This episode is proudly sponsored by Vivino, the world's largest online wine marketplace. The Vivino app makes it easy to choose wine. Enjoy expert team support, door-to-door delivery, and honest wine reviews to help you choose the perfect wine for every occasion. Vivino. Download the app on Apple or Android and discover an easier way to choose wine.
Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. This is Voices with Rebecca Lawrence, and this week I'm joined by newly certified Italian wine ambassador, Alberto Martinez Interiano. I hope I said that correctly. Welcome to the podcast, Alberto.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. And yes, indeed you did. You pronounced it really well. So it's a pleasure to be here.
I was a little bit nervous on the pronunciation. I wanted to make sure it was correct, as you know. So I like to start these conversations by asking my guests to introduce themselves to the listeners. Maybe they don't quite know what the background is, why we're talking today. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're currently working on.
Yes. So I'm a wine educator and writer based in Seattle, Washington. And I mostly teach Italian and Spanish wine at a couple of schools in the Pacific Northwest. One is the Cellar Muse Wine School in Seattle, which along with fellow VIA ambassador Tanya Morningstar Darling. And I also teach at the Wine and Spirits Archive in Portland, Oregon. Also, besides sort of my education and teaching side, I write for my blog, Vino Interiano, and I'm also a contributor for a couple of other wine publications.
Yeah, you're a contributor to the Vintner Project, which is a project very close to my heart. I know Nelson well, so I was very pleased and excited to see your work popping up there.
Great.
So are you full-time in wine right now? Because I know you didn't start in wine, so I was wondering where the passion came from.
Yes. So to answer that question, yeah, I do have sort of a 8 to 5 job on the side. But I'll say that I probably, if I counted the hours that I work in wine nowadays, it's becoming also another full-time. It just happens on evenings, nights, and weekends. Yeah. So during the day, I'm a product marketing manager at a large tech firm in Seattle. And most of my time, most of my spare time, as I said, it's dedicated to wine when I'm not sort of during the day job. And I would say that my passion really emerged first when I lived in Italy during my teen years. Spent some time in a town called Scandicci, which is about 30 minutes outside of Florence. Right now, it's mostly a suburb of Florence. And when I was there, I really fell in love with all Italian food and Italian wine and Italian culture. I grew up in El Salvador in Latin America, and though wine is we drink wine, but it's not something that we live with every day. It's mostly consumed sort of in special occasions, anniversaries, birthdays, weddings, family gatherings, that type of thing. And I was, first time that I was in Italy, I was very impressed when going to my friends' homes for dinner, and wine was always sort of at the table. It was a daily part of the experience, and kind of that started hooked me on just wine and wine culture in general.
You've not just pursued this passion through sort of initial visits and tastings, but you also formalized your education through WSET certification. You have both French and Italian wine scholar. Now you have VIA. Why did you want to take this more formal approach? What was it that changed for you?
Yeah, so I really became serious about wine when I moved to Seattle. About 15 years ago. The community here is incredibly vibrant. There are a lot of local wineries, there are tasting rooms, and lots of just wine-loving people and just enthusiasts. So I started, like many people, when I'm bitten by the wine bug, reading all the books and articles I could get my hands on. I joined and even formed a couple of tasting groups, and then decided that I needed to do something and formalize all this education, as I needed to know more, by attending both WSET courses and Wine Scholar Guild to begin with. I'll say that the WSET it was a great sort of platform for breadth in terms of really getting to know the wines of the world at a not super in-depth level. And then these regional specializations, especially like VIA, give you that depth, sort of like a depth approach in terms of really going in detail about a specific country or region. So I'll say that that's one of the main benefits that I loved about a program like VIA is really going in and not only knowing the superficial, the better known regions, but going after sort of lesser known or sort of yet to be discovered places. And so that's where I am. I completed my WSET diploma last year. And yes, I'm also, as you mentioned, the three programs, the wine, French, Italian, and Spanish wine scholars from the Wine Scholar Guild. And just last month, completed the VIA Wine Ambassador program.
I'm kind of wondering where you're going to go from here, because I'm not sure there's many certifications left for you.
Yeah, I think that for now, I've got exactly in terms of, it's hard to say. I'm sort of one of those lifelong learners, so probably want to continue and doing more in detail. But in terms of specific certifications, I'll say that going more in depth in terms of what's next. In VIA, for example, it was an incredible program, both in terms of the, getting to know the 20 wine regions in Italy and then going a bit in detail, but I think we barely scratched the surface in terms of what's there to know. I mean, just going and spending time in, you name it, Montalcino or Chianti Classico. There is so much. So probably in terms of what will be the ideal next steps, there's so much more to know, to learn, to write about in so many regions, especially in Italy, that it's, there's this diversity, which is incredible.
And so at what point did you decide to kind of turn your student days into your educator days? Because you do now teach. You're part of this amazing team at Cellar Muse. I'm huge fans of what you've been doing. I keep recommending you to everyone. So at what point did that kind of come around? Because obviously you're already working a full-time job. You're already trying to do all of these tastings and do your wine education. And now you're adding this additional layer of being an educator.
Yeah, so I'll say that when that happened, I was having a conversation with with Tanya, and she suggested, I think she probably must have seen my interest and my passion, and she said, "Hey, would you like to be part of that and come teach along with me?" So I think that she was the one that sort of planted that seed. What then was said, "Oh, that sounds like a really incredible area and a great opportunity." So that was sort of the first baby step to go in about a couple of years ago in that direction, and that's been sort of so far a great journey. So up to this point, yeah. And I'll say that there are many people who decide to work in wine and kind of they have their aha moment when they're in their 20s or probably sometimes even before, even when people have a winery, it's kind of they're predestined to do that. And in some cases, I think for me it was a little more slower and gradual. And so I'll say that for any folks who are listening now that have a mid-career or started doing something else on the side, there's always, I think it's never too late to sort of follow what you love, follow your dreams, and then take the plunge and do that. And
I can absolutely agree with that, because I'm someone who also came to wine a little bit later in my life. It was always a bit of a kind of side interest, and it took me a while to realize that I could combine my love of education with my love of wine and do both. And yeah, it took me a long time to get to that. I was already into my 30s when I was like, I could put these two together. That's great.
Yes. Yeah. That's great.
And I think that's true. That's one of the great things about the wine industry that maybe people don't realize initially is there are so many different things that you can do potentially that involve wine. You don't have to just be a sommelier. You can be an educator, you can be in marketing, in sales, in photo video. And of course, one of the other things that you do is wine writing. So you have your own blog. You're also writing for Vintner Project. I wondered if you had a goal, because your blog has been established for quite a while now. So was that just an outlet for you to share your knowledge, or did you have a bigger goal in mind?
Yeah, I wish that I had sort of a super specific goal in mind, but no, I think at the beginning, exactly, that was an outlet, and I treated more as a type of sort of journal to express myself, a journal for some travels and things that I was learning along the way. So it's mostly, I would say, for sort of my own thing. But then I realized that people were somehow discovering it and finding value in it. And it was really a great opportunity to start and be part of certain conversations, joined or build communities on related to wine, and also bring a different perspective to, I would say, what at that point at least, or even to this day, it's mostly kind of the general wine writing. So that's what I think I've been sort of veering towards a little more on writing about either lesser known or what I call undiscovered areas. And there are still quite a few out there that are not getting, but for many reasons, whether because they're too small or they don't get a lot of the coverage and sort of popularity, and they're not as fashionable as others. So I think that there's a just a big untapped opportunity there to either bring to life some new regions, new grapes, even lesser known producers, smaller artisanal producers that are doing fantastic wines that are just not known, at least in the English speaking world.
Yeah, I was really enjoying a lot of your articles. It's very comprehensive and also really nice, easy to enjoy style, but with all of the knowledge there. So I'm going to point our listeners to Vino Italiano so that they can go and check it out, because there's some amazing content there just waiting for them, particularly for our ambassadors or would-be ambassadors.
Thank you. Yes, and I think that right now there's, after coming out of the VIA program, I have so many ideas. I mean, there's just it opened my mind, my eyes, and my mind to so many things. So I have a good backlog of things that I love to write about, and places and sort of wineries in Italy that can't wait to get some time and do it. Yeah, unfortunately, the last couple of weeks have been a pause because of prepping for the VIA exam, but now I think that will be the time as we start into the summer and fall.
So speaking of VIA, actually, I read a comment which might be a little bit old now, where you were talking about French wines being some of the benchmarks of winemaking. I wonder, because obviously VIA is all about presenting benchmark wines and producers of regions, if VIA has maybe begun to change your mind, and was there something in particular that you tasted at VIA that maybe you enjoyed, was unexpected, kind of sparked a new interest to a new avenue?
Yeah. So that comment's probably a couple years old, but I think it's still, for better or for worse, it's still valid in terms of, and what I meant to was, when as the French wines are the benchmark, it's more because these international French varieties are still what people are most familiar with and kind of what they're used to. So, and they're in a way a point of reference that people can be referred to. So I think one of the jobs as a VIA ambassadors is to bring these amazing Italian grape varieties that are not as well known as sort of French or international ones, and to kind of bring them on side by side. Right now, I mean, an intermediate step that sort of in the past I've used is kind of referred to, for example, maybe not exactly the best example, but we hear about Carricante or Verdicchio being sort of Riesling-like, and so people are familiar to Riesling. So there's a little bridge in terms of this petrol-y, flinty notes that are reminiscent of what Riesling, what people know. Same, I would say, with, Nero d'Avola, Montepulciano, which may not be exactly 100%, but they're sort of Merlot-like, and they're a little softer, rounder, more a little darker fruit. So in terms of using the French varieties, I think for some time they'll continue to be those reference points. But I think initially we can do a good job of just bringing people and say, hey, this is what you're familiar with, and this is sort of what it fits in the same category, and eventually having them stand on their own. And I think that, for example, Sangiovese or Nebbiolo are the two that I can think of that are there that people already know, and they don't need to have anything else. It's, people know what Nebbiolo and Sangiovese taste like. So ideally, down the road, that would be something that we could do for other really not as well-known Italian grape varieties. And in terms of the second question on something that I enjoyed the most at VIA, there were so many. I think we must have tasted, I don't know, maybe 200. I was trying to count 200 wines at some point in 3 or 4 days. So it was a lot. But what stood out was probably the things or the wines that either are rare or we don't get to try them on a regular basis, at least in my neck of the woods and in our market. Something like, for example, Schioppettino and Refosco. which were, I think I may have tried once before and I didn't really remember, or even the Nascetta that we had in the test. So there were some things that are unique and very special, so that at least that otherwise I wouldn't have had the opportunity to really assess them in a lot of detail.
I do love that advantage. Like you say about how WSET gives you the broad scope, but courses like VIA give you that depth, particularly when it comes to the tasting of the varieties. It blew me away how many varieties I was able to taste when I did VIA, and seeing students have that same experience and what value it gives to actually be able to talk about the grape variety in its native terroir and then actually taste it. And so you're talking about Nascetta, that was one of the grapes that really blew me away when I was sort of tasting through for VIA. But also I discovered Tintilia from Molise. I mean, I'd studied for VIA, I knew this grape existed, but I had no idea that I was going to be able to taste an actual Tintilia. And I remember that moment of going, wow, like it's just so different to what I've had. And I liked your comments about using these benchmarks of Merlots, Rieslings, these international grapes as kind of the gateway into the Italians. Like it's Merlot-ish, it's Riesling-esque, but then as you get deeper and deeper and deeper, you get further away from it and more immersed into this lovely kind of native grape menagerie.
That's right. And especially as there are quite a few that I would say that they have no comparison. There's nothing else in the world that tastes like, I don't know, I'm thinking Lacrima di Morro d'Alba, for example. It's one that, yeah, it's so unique and so special that that it deserves its own chapter in a way.
So thinking about things that are special, is there a particular wine or a particular region of Italy that is speaking to you at the moment?
There are probably two that I'm really excited about today. I have some regions that are dear to my heart that I think are super popular. I mean, Chianti Classico, Brunello, etc. But in terms of the two sort of new exciting areas, one is Etna. And I think that is one, just because the wines, the whites, Etna Rosso and the Bianchi are amazing. They're just super, super elegant, high quality. But also the fact that, there's this, the setting of just growing grapes and having vines in an active volcano at all the different elevations, different exposures, with different types of soils, depending on where the lava flows. When it is just a really exciting story and fascinating story to begin with. And then the product delivers, because there's these super elegant, nuanced wines that are I think world class. So that's an area that I think it's doing a lot of great things in terms of becoming more, again, bringing an international term, Burgundian, but in terms of really being site specific and talking about all the 133 contrade and how you can taste the nuances between one and the other, depending on so many factors. I think there's a lot of, there's a bright future there in Etna, and I'm quite excited about. And the other is a place that I had a chance to visit right after VIA. So a couple of weeks ago, we went to Valtellina, up in the Swiss border in Lombardy. And besides this just gorgeous landscape and this awe-inspiring setting of these super steep terraces over the Adda River, right up in near the Alps. Yeah, it's sort of a quite elegant take on Nebbiolo, as they call it, Nebbiolo from the mountains. And that's another area that I think it's, especially as global warming that continues, there's another take on a more of a softer, lighter side of Nebbiolo that I'm sort of really excited about too.
I'm very jealous of your trip to Valtellina, because over the last couple of years of being in Italy, that's something I didn't have too much exposure to in the UK. There's some wines around, but not in the same, obviously, way that you can get here. And I too really enjoy the different expression of Nebbiolo that you get from this completely mountainous, heroic climate. So yeah, very jealous. So what's next for you in terms of your Italian wine journey? Obviously, you're teaching, you've got classes, you're doing tastings, but what would you really like to do next?
So I think that, yes, as I mentioned earlier, there's a deeper dive on the teaching side. I think that we realize that there's a lot of appetite for more in-depth content on many wine regions. So there's an area that I think that for sure want to explore further. The same with writing along the way. I think that the kind of come hand in hand in terms of that deeper dive on certain much more Italian grapes and Italian soils and regions. I think two things. One that has been put on hold for quite some time for many of us has been travel. So yeah, thank goodness that was my first big trip in like a while. It's like 18 months probably. Just a recent trip to Verona. So I would love to continue to do more. I think I can wait. Once things normalize, especially I think that southern Italy is an area that has always been on my wish list, on my to-do. So Campania, Puglia, Sicily, Sardinia. So that will be an ideal next step. And also one more thing that it's, especially I found out during the pandemic, I became a bit reacquainted with several wine lover communities in Latin America. And I believe that there's really a lot of potential to spread the word of Italian wines, not only where I am now, but either virtually, especially in a region that has a lot of affinity with Italian wine, Italian culture, that I think I'd love to get closer to it and sort of be part of that community in a more active way as well. Yeah, I think a little bit of teaching, writing, traveling when possible, and then also reaching out to new groups.
It sounds like you're going to have a very busy time ahead.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I think that there's a lot of pent-up things that we haven't been able to do in the last few months, and I think they're just ready to go. So yeah, it'll be a good but busy week.
Alberto, thank you so much for joining me on the Italian Wine Podcast today. Where can our listeners find you, your writing, your teaching, online or on social media?
Yeah, no, thank you. So I can be found at my blog, which is Vino Interiano, just one word, as you heard, vinointeriano.com. And also I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Vino Interiano.
Guys, I'm going to link to those so you can go and read Alberto's writing. His blog is awesome. It's such a great source of information. Thank you to everyone for listening. Don't forget to follow us on social media, subscribe, and of course donate on the website so that we can make sure to keep these great conversations flowing.
Listen to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, chin chin.
Hi everybody! Italian Wine Podcast celebrates its 4th anniversary this year, and we all love the great content they put out every day. Chin Chin with Italian wine people has become a big part of our day, and the team in Verona needs to feel our love. Producing the show is not easy, folks. Herding all those hosts, getting the interviews, dropping the clubhouse recordings, not to mention editing all the material. Let's give them a tangible fan hug with a contribution to all their costs. Head to ItalianWinePodcast.com and click donate to show your love.